Welcome back to Life's Chillent. My name is Avital, and this week's Parshat is Parshat Tisa. And Parshat Tisa features the very famous story of the golden calf. So, in case you're not familiar with the story, what happened was Moses was on Mount Sinai, and he was working with God to sort of receive the Torah, to create the two tablets that would have the commandments written on them. And the Jewish people, had miscalculated how long it was that Moses had been up there. Moses said, I'm going to be up there 40 days and 40 nights, and the people miscalculated the time. And so they thought Moses was delayed in returning, and they were very frightened. And so the people went to Aaron and they said, Rise up, make for us gods that will go before us. For this man, Moses, who brought us up from the land of Egypt, we do not know what became of him. So the Jewish people are asking Aaron to make gods, to go before them. And the common belief amongst the commentators is that this is talking about sort of an intermediary between the people and God. And that the people had Moses, who was interceding and communicating with God on their behalf. And now they didn't have Moses anymore in their mind. And so they wanted gods to be what went between them and God. And so they asked Aaron to make it. And for reasons that I won't go into this week, Aaron decided to tell the people to collect their gold earrings. And the people did that, and they brought them to Aaron, and Aaron threw the stuff into the fire, and out came this golden calf. And the people were elated, and they decided they were going to give it offerings, and they were dancing, and they were singing, and they were eating, and they were so happy that they had this golden calf. And Moses is up there on Har Sinai. He doesn't yet know what happened. And God tells him that the people have made this deity, that they have made this golden calf. And God is very angry. And God says, Let my anger flare up against them, and I shall annihilate them, and I shall make you a great nation. So God is saying, let me wipe out all of the Jewish people, and you, Moses, I'm going to make you a great nation. So Moses didn't have anything to lose, really, because Moses was going to be fine. God wasn't saying, I'm mad at you, I'm going to kill you. God was saying, I'm going to wipe out the people, and you, Moses, are still going to be a great nation. But yet, Moses didn't just accept that. What happens next is this long verse that I'm going to read to you of Moses pleading with God. It says, Moses pleaded before Hashem his God, and said, Why, Hashem, should your anger flare up against your people, whom you have taken out of the land of Egypt, with great power and a strong hand? Why should Egypt say the following? With evil intent did they take them out of Egypt to kill them in the mountains and to annihilate them from the face of the earth. Relent from your flaring anger and reconsider regarding the evil against your people. Remember, for the sake of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, your servants, to whom you swore by yourself, and you told them, I shall increase your offspring like the stars of the heaven and the entire land of which I spoke. I shall give it to your offspring, and it shall be their heritage forever. And then the Torah tells us, it says, Hashem reconsidered the evil that he declared he would do to his people. So Moses comes to God pleading, and he goes through a number of reasons why God should reconsider. He says, for public relations, should the Egyptians be there saying, oh, God didn't love the Jews, God just brought the Jews into the desert to kill them in a worse place than in Egypt. That's one. And two, Moses is saying to God, remember the promise you made to Abraham and Isaac and to Israel, who were your faithful servants who were loyal to you, and you said you were going to make them a great nation? How could you not fulfill that promise that you made to them? And God hears Moses' points and realizes that Moses is correct, and the Torah tells us that he reconsidered. So Moses, again, who arguably had nothing to gain from this, he spoke up on behalf of the Jewish people, and he argued for them. He went to battle, in a sense, for them, to try and save them from this fate that God had bestowed upon them. And then when Moses descends from Mount Sinai and he sees what the Jewish people did, he has to go back to God and plead again. And he says, I implore, this people has committed a grievous sin and made themselves a god of gold. And now if you would but forgive their sin, but if not, erase me now from your book that you have written. So Moses clearly saw that the Jewish people had been wrong, but he says to God, if you're going to wipe them out, me too, God. You have to wipe me out too. I stand with them. I stand by them. That these are the people that Moses has really become attached to. And Moses was their intermediary for a long time between them and God. And so Moses said, okay, if you're going to wipe out all of these people, you have to take me with them. And God does not wipe out the Jewish people. God inflicts a plague upon the Jewish people, but God does not wipe out the Jewish people. So when we think about this making of the golden calf, the people were afraid to speak directly to God. They in many ways did not know that they had the power within their own voices to speak to God. They thought that they needed something else to do the talking for them. And I don't feel like that's such an uncommon occurrence that we have as well. Whether it's speaking to a boss or a teacher or a family member or somebody we're within an argument with, think about how often we want to go to somebody else so that they will speak on our behalf, so that they will speak up for us. Even think about members of the government, right? We are counting on them to hear our voices and to speak on our behalf. But Moses didn't do that. Moses wasn't afraid to speak to anyone, even to God, even to bring up points to God of saying, in a sense, that God, you're wrong, or that God, I think you should reconsider. God, think about what you're doing. Moses wasn't even afraid to go to God and to question God's ways. So we shouldn't be afraid either. We shouldn't be afraid to speak up for ourselves, to speak up for others, to stand up for those around us. When we are seeing something that isn't right, that doesn't sit well for us, we need to speak up. Whether if it's happening to us, we should speak up for ourselves. Directly, loudly, we need to stand up for ourselves. And if we're seeing it happening to somebody else whose voice is not as strong and whose voice is not as powerful yet, we should either encourage them to try and speak on their own behalf, or we need to stand up for them the way that Moses stood up for the Jewish people. The Jewish people had been slaves. They were not accustomed to being leaders. They had Moses as their leader, and so Moses needed to speak up for them. But we have the tools. God has equipped us with voices, and each of us, we are able to speak up for ourselves when we need to defend ourselves, to ask for the things that we desire. And so I think that's a very powerful lesson we can learn from this week's Parsha. I wish you all a wonderful week and a Shabbat Shalom, and I look forward to speaking with you next time.